Thank you for being here at another episode of It's My Money with Patrina Dixon, if you're watching us, or The Money Exchange, if you're listening to us. I am Patrina Dixon, your It's My Money lady. I'm so happy to have you all here again. I'm recording this during Financial Literacy Month. You all know this is one of my favorite months. So glad to be here with my guest, Alexa. Hey, Alexa, how are you?
Hi, Patrina. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Alexa is the founder of the Be Fearless Summit, and she's going to give you the lowdown of her entire story. And I just want to share how we got together. She asked me to be a guest on her Be Fearless Summit at UConn, which is one of our state universities here in Connecticut. And from there, she moderated a panel that I sat on at Eastern Connecticut. And over the course of those 2 days, I heard her story and I knew I had to have her on the show. So Alexa, just tell the folks, let's just jump in, how you got started. Alexa Curd is more commonly known for the Be Fearless Summit. Tell us how you got started.
Yeah, so it was so great having you at both of those. And especially on the last one, I had to choose through so many speakers. And I just knew that your story was going to be so captivating to everyone, especially at Eastern. So thanks so much for being there. But I grew up in Mansfield, so a super small town in Eastern Connecticut, never fit in. And then when I was 7, actually, my father was wrongfully convicted and put in prison in Rhode Island. So the year that he got out, I was 12. And that's the year that I started this fashion blog, initially called A Life in the Fashion Lane. And over the past 10 years, I was 12 then, I'm 24 now. I've built it out into this full-time lifestyle platform. I had a podcast that helped me land a show on Radio Disney. So I ended up in LA for some years. And then when I was at Disney, I launched the Be Fearless Summit. So far, we've had 4 different summits, and through it, I've also launched a mentorship program, as you know, and I'm excited to continue to see the growth of the brand.
Yes. And, when I follow you and I see you talk about lifestyle and I watch you and I'm like, wow, I would be amazed. Like, I know your audience is probably more people along the age that you just mentioned, but I love the various different outfits that you put together. You should I don't know if it's lifestyle, including fashion, but you are always dressed in the nines. I love it so much.
You're so good. Well, you always have your t-shirt, like your signature. Anytime I see you, I'm like, God, I need to start just wearing only things that say fearless, but I certainly do love fashion.
Yes, I love it, and you wear it well. So now you talk about how you touched Disney very quickly. Then you went to the Be Fearless Summit. So the Be Fearless Summit is how we came together, and I think the audience would love to hear more about this. Tell me why. Like, you're at Disney, why Be Fearless Summit? You could have done anything you wanted to do. You can model, you can be a fashion model, you can talk about more about lifestyle and stay right there. Why did you integrate that into what you're doing?
That's such a good question. It was the funniest thing. So I had gone to 2 conferences and I started speaking when I was about 18, which is when I started talking a lot more, got way out of fashion and started talking a lot more about being fearless and just unfiltered overall as a young entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And I had this idea after speaking I spoke at a really big conference, Penn Woman with Amal Clooney and Serena Williams. And I was at this conference in Philadelphia and I just remember being like, none of this is related to me. Like if I was 24, I think at the time I was maybe 19, 20. And I was like, if I was 20 and at this conference, I couldn't relate to any of this. And so I was like, through the podcast and just being in the industry for so long, I had so many connections. And so I made this whole media kit, loved the word fearless, and was like, I'm just going to host conferences. So what ends up happening is for a year, I reach out to every single college. I pitch it to everyone. No one replies. And I was like, okay, like this is dumb. I thought this was going to be way easier. And I ended up randomly being at a conference and there was a booth there with Drexel University. And I went up to the woman and was like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. I've got this idea. And I literally remember being like, at this point, I was like, everyone's going to say no anyway, so I might as well be honest. Everyone said no to it. But, if Drexel ever wants to do this, and she was like, actually, we're thinking about doing something like this. Like, can I get your email? So we ended up setting a meeting and I drove down. I think I don't even know where I was at the time because I hadn't started the Disney show yet. I think I was living in Boston. I drove down went to Boston, then Connecticut, and then drove from Connecticut to Philly. And they were like, can you do this in March? And I think the meeting was in October, November. Wow. And I was like, of course, I'm just going to call some friends and we're going to show up and like, just talk. It was way more complicated than that. incredibly hard to do. And I learned so much about it. And then from there, the response was, I just remember being like, oh my gosh, like what have I started here? Just seeing people go up to these speakers and everything. It was just remarkable. So from there, I, pitched it out again, no reply, then got one reply, I think after the next maybe 5 or 6 months. And then from there, just kind of kept doing them. And then the Yukon one was certainly the biggest one so far.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you did it in Connecticut at UConn. I'm glad I had the opportunity to be a part because it was wonderful. I am such a proponent of those that have walked the shoes to share those stories with those that are coming behind us. So I'm so glad that you did that. Thank you for what you're doing. And I hope more colleges are watching this and that when you get her pitch, you take her on because the young people that have been in rooms have responded very positively to what she's bringing to these colleges. So yeah, so thank you for what you're doing. So now you talk about being a young entrepreneur. I am an older entrepreneur. I'll say more seasoned entrepreneur. And I know it's not easy, especially putting on your own event. Like that's, I for the first time in doing that. And that is wickedly hard trying to get people in the room. But so there is a financial component to starting your own business, right? Like, did you learn that part, finances, prior to getting in business or as you were going through the various different things that you were doing?
Oh my gosh, Patrina, I knew nothing. I mean, I started this blog when I was 12. I don't come from a background of entrepreneurs. I don't come from a background of money. I come from a background of honestly, like parents who really struggled, very much middle-class parents, and very hardworking parents. But my mom certainly installed this incredibly frugal kind of like save all of your money, don't ever use your money. Like life is going to get really, sorry to swear, but like really fucking hard. And like, you just want to make sure you have money. So growing up, I remember being like, oh my God, like I would just freak out if I was running out of money or I didn't have any money. And then I was like, I'm not going to make it into college. I remember asking my mom, are you going to pay for my college? And she was like, no. And I remember kind of having this point where like, at that point I was failing out of high school and I was like, what's the game plan? You can't even pay for me to go to college. I had started making money from the website and she was like, I don't really like, what's your game plan? And I was like, all right, I'm moving. I was like, I'm going to go to New York. I packed up all of my stuff. And I think my parents were like, she'll come back, whatever. And I found an apartment and I never left. And it really taught me a lot about entrepreneurship, but even more about money. And I think from there, I've talked a lot about what I did at the beginning, and I would take out credit cards and I put everything on credit cards because especially I was super heavy in entertainment back then. So I would work with a lot of brands for TV segments I'd get paid to do. And I would be on net 30. And in that 30 days, I'd have to pay for everything. Like your 9 to 5, my 9 to 5 at that point was TV segments and the side hustle was the blog and the podcast and whatnot. So I would put everything on those cards and I got myself into probably about $25,000 in debt. I would say I've paid off maybe half of it so far, but I didn't even realize what debt even was until I think I'm 24 now. I would say probably a year and a half ago. I remember walking down the street and I called my mom. I was in LA and I was still filming at Disney. And I remember being like, I'm going to tell you something. And I don't think you're prepared for it, but like, I'm in a lot of debt. And my mom was like, what do you mean you're in debt? And I was like, I have PayPal credit and I have these 8 credit cards and no one ever told me what to do with these cards and they've just been sitting there. And my mom was like, oh my God, like, what did you do? And I just like sat down one day and I was like, okay, like where do I start? And so I just love what you do because it is incredibly important to teach people about finances from so young.
Yes. And wow, that is a great setup for this. That is exactly why I do what I do, right? Because a lot of young people going to college or not, whichever path they end up taking, don't really get this information in high school, right? So if you do go and open up, to the mall, wherever you go, open up this credit card, you are always told that what you can charge, how much the money or the credit limit is, but the paying back part, you're not really educated on that. So it's interesting that you brought it up in that way. And, it was very, it took a lot of courage to tell your mom that. And I'm glad that your mom didn't like, oh my God, like you, like,
oh no, she did. She freaked out. But I remember just being like, you didn't teach me this. So you can be mad, but like how was I going to pay for anything? So she really did freak out. But it's kind of like, what's the point of you freaking out? I'm in debt. I'm going to figure it out.
Right. Yeah. And oftentimes, and I tell this as a part of my story is, even for my daughter now it's like, what she saw was mom goes to work, get a paycheck, pay our bills, and we have things, we have a roof, we have food. How all of that happened, I at the time, because I wasn't the finance coach that I am now, I didn't show her that. I just made sure she had the best that I can provide for her at the time. And I'm sure, just like your mom, we wanted to make sure we were doing things right, that you had a roof over your head, you had food, we're educated, things of that nature. But showing her about how finances worked, how you even got it in, how you made it grow, like that came well after I was a mom for several years. So again, I appreciate the opportunities when we can share stories, again, that can help others. So thank you for sharing that. So now you're in debt, you're climbing yourself out of debt, but your money, I'm sure, is growing at this time. Did you pay more, or did you on the debt, or now that you knew you had to, or was it still like, it didn't bother me, I'm still able to live my best life, I don't worry about that debt? How did you work through that?
So I ended up getting I would say for the first like maybe 5 months when I realized that I was in that debt, I really just tried to do everything that I could to like start with per card. And I actually called and I did a lot of research. This was before I even met you. And I figured out that like you can call a credit card and say that you're thinking about going bankrupt. And if your case is severe enough, they'll put you on this plan. They didn't need proof you were going bankrupt. They didn't care. And I ended up getting these 2 credit cards I had that was, I think, like 19% interest rate down to 1%. One of them was 0. And now I have automatic payments on that. So like, could I go and pay, I think one of them is at maybe 2,000 or 3,000. Like, could I go and pay that off 100? Like, sure. If you really want to, like, I'm fine paying it. Like, there's no interest. That's okay. And then the one that I really tackled hardcore was PayPal credit. I had gotten that up to, I think, like $2,500, maybe $3,500. And I paid that one off just bigger payments, like $500, I think a month I did. But I think that the older that I got, and especially where I am now, I just really realized that I want to have a house in 2 years and these things. So now I've put a lot more money in savings and just trying to be consistent with honestly just paying off the existing debt that I have.
Wonderful, wonderful. I like how you have the goal, because some would say, I want to buy a house soon or in the future. You was like in 2 years. So that in itself will help you sort of stay on the path to get to that 2-year mark. So that's good that you're doing that. So now, although you have the Be Fearless Summit, which is great. And again, I hope more schools let you come in. I love to continue to partner with you on that. Your lifestyle blog, like, do you do that as much? I see it come across some, but tell us how if people want to know more about that, tell them what that is and how you earn revenue from that.
Yeah, so I started the blog back in 2011. So that was really kind of the catalyst for everything that I do. And it started as a fashion blog. It was called A Life in the Fashion Lane. And then I would say after about 6 years, I changed it to be totally about being unfiltered and being fearless and entrepreneurship. So now it's called Life Unfiltered with Alexa. And I would say I post probably like 3 to 4 times a week on it. My podcast gets posted on it. Sometimes I'll do like sponsored posts on it. So for the most part, if there's a sponsored post, I bring in revenue that way. I mean, that's certainly not the only place that I bring in revenue, but the blog posts do really well. And then sometimes I'll do kind of like bundle deals. Maybe I'll do a podcast ad as well as a sponsored blog post with a company. And so that'll go up on the website too. But yeah, I mean, the website that's how I started. It's my love. I always love to write. So it's still my just kind of creative outlet.
I love that. I love that so much. So now you said you talked at a conference. Like, how are people finding you? Are the conferences that you are a part of, meaning as a guest, is it more for the Be Fearless Summit, or is it more for the podcast and or blog?
It depends. So a lot of times I'll get hired to do these one-off talks. So that'll be, and that I was even doing that before I started the summit program. So I'll go to a college and I'll do an hour presentation on building your own brand or mental health, sometimes even with a high school or a middle school on that really similar topic too. I'll just kind of tailor the talk a bit. And then I would say definitely the bigger things are like the summits. And so that's way more complicated. The Eastern one that we did, that was pretty cool. So they had come to me and they were kind of like flexible, do you want to do a talk? Do you want to do a panel? And they had kind of already had something that they wanted to do that was like a half-day summit. So I think they were leaning more towards a panel, but usually it would just be a summit or like a one-off talk.
Okay, got it. So as people are watching this, and they are interested in similar things that you're doing, podcast, blog, lifestyle, unfiltered. I love that word, be fearless. I love those 2 words together. So what do you want to say to those that are considering, like, I'm in this place, maybe I'm not doing well, as I should, or my parents think I should be. Like, I'm afraid to be fearless. Like, you know what I mean? What do you want to say to those folks that are listening that may think there's only one way to get to be successful? What do you have to say to them?
I always get asked what and how do I define being fearless? And I always look at it as you don't need to be jumping out of a plane to be fearless and getting out of your comfort zone. I really think that there's one small thing a day that you can do to really help find your identity. And perhaps that means you know that you really like the internet, or you really want to start a blog and you don't know what to do. Well, okay, it's very easy what to do. And the first thing you could do would maybe you want to make a LinkedIn profile, or maybe you even want to send a company a pitch email about whatever it is that you're looking to do, or you want to start a podcast and you want to get sponsored for an ad. So make a draft email and leave that in your inbox, or send it to someone and have them review it. And then I think, one day you'll feel comfortable enough to just send the email. But I think it really comes down to being comfortable with being uncomfortable and doing something every day where you do that. And that can be a really small thing, trying a new coffee shop or making business cards. And I think through all of that, all the trial and error, that's really how you figure out what you want to do.
Yes. And that's great advice. And I think sometimes people think that they have to be perfect to get started. You know what I mean? Like, I got to have all my ducks in a row. I got to have the right for a podcast, the right mic, the right headphones, and all that. It's like, get started. And then when you put out the first episode, you'll know what you need to change. When you write the first blog, you'll reread it and you know what, so it's, would you agree with that?
Oh, beyond. And then I think it's so funny, nowadays, entrepreneurship in general is so glamorized. Like when I started this, the word influencer, TikTok wasn't even around. I mean, this was back in 2011. So I really had to build a brand from the ground up. And I think that people get so stuck right now on if it's not happening overnight, that like, I'm going to give up, or this idea sucks. And it's not like that at all. It's the opposite. I mean, you have to put so much time and energy, and even then you might not get the traffic you expect, and you just have to switch a little bit. And I mean, when you look at the course of my whole career, it's not like I just got to where I am now, like starting a blog. I had a blog, it was about fashion, then I did all these TV segments, and then it was the podcast, and then the Disney show, and then I started another podcast, and then summits, and now I'm here. I mean, that's over 10 years.
Yes.
So get back to me when you consider failure it not working in 6 months or 1 year.
Exactly right. And I always say to people, don't compare your year 1 to somebody's year 10. Like you haven't put enough time into, to your point, to say it didn't work. Like you haven't worked it long enough to determine that. That's so true.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I mean, I think a lot of people also, they want the success, and that's so exciting, but it's really, if you don't want to keep doing it when it's hard, then it's really like, find something else to do. If you're someone where, I know people who started a podcast and after the 5th or 10th episode, they're like, I'm not making any money and I'm not having any followers. Like, okay, well, keep doing it. And if you're like, I'm giving up, then this is not right for you. Find something else.
Exactly right. And that, it sounds like we share similar things to folks, because I'm like, if I could do what you and I are doing right now, or if I could talk about personal finance and giving people tips on that and entrepreneurship, I could do it every day, all day, from the time I wake up to the time I finally fall asleep, whatever that hour of the morning is. So when you are doing it like that, meaning you're passionate about what you're doing, it doesn't even feel like work, even though it is, and you're putting the hours in and the time and growing your brand, whatever it is that you're doing. But if you are frustrated by hour 2 of day 3, then you're not in the right lane. That's not the right lane for you.
Yeah. And even when you get successful, I mean, I bet you found this too, like there comes new things that you struggle with. I mean, I would say that the clearer the vision becomes, it's almost the more obsessed you become and the more frustrated you become when things go wrong, because you've seen this ounce of success. And I feel like that's something I certainly really struggle with. But when before, it's like at the beginning of an entrepreneur, you're so naive. Every mistake is new and you cry about it and it all sucks. And now it's like, when I make a mistake or I have a bad business deal, I really take it to heart, because I'm like, I've done this like I could have done better. I knew it. I should have slept more. I should have prepared more, whatever it is. So new struggles come with success.
Oh, absolutely. And look what the pandemic did for us all.
Yeah.
Even for those that like that my year 2019 was my highest revenue generating year in my business. And then the pandemic said, uh-oh, stop. You're not going in anybody's room. Like you're not, like that's not happening. Beyond my control, beyond my clients anticipated ask, we had to shut down. So you're right. You have to then, if you're still within your lane, find a way to make that all still happen, even in those circumstances.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Really right.
Yeah. So those that are listening, I know again you gave a lot of tips as we were going through. I want you to leave them with one, like Alexa says this. Like if you are interested in doing you, however that is in the entrepreneurship lane, whatever that lane is for you, but you want to be an entrepreneur. What would you have to say to them? Not the tip, but what would you have to say about the character, about what they need to ensure about themselves before going down this path?
That's a great point. Certainly, I mean, I certainly would say one tip that I would advise anyone to do with what they're starting is like go on the internet, go on Pinterest, go on Instagram, whatever it is, and like start looking at companies or things that you like. Maybe you don't even know what industry you want to work in, but I think having that vision and that mood board is really cool because you can kind of see like, this is someone that I really like following, and this is someone that I don't like following. And I think that's a great base to analyze who and how you want to be represented online. But I think aside from that, in terms of entrepreneurship, you really have to focus on building yourself up as a person. I think the lack of identity, I want to say, that I see a lot of especially young people struggle with, and I truly attribute a lot of it to social media, is we're not really taught anymore how to have normal conversation and going on. You really have to almost get back to your roots and really figure it out. What effect do you want to have on people? And I think from there you can really figure out that brand that you might want to build. And I mean, when I look back at my journey, right, like I really in a sense just used all of my mistakes to hopefully help one other person. So I've kind of built the brand off of that. And so utilize that too. Like look at things you could have done better or you wish you had been stronger at, and think like, okay, maybe is there a need that someone else has for that? Or I never liked the way that my t-shirts felt. Like, okay, maybe you should be making t-shirts for people who every entrepreneur is starting something because of their own personal struggle situation. So hone into that.
Yes. Now talk about social. There's a bunch of platforms out now. I know there wasn't as many back 10 years ago when you started, and you talked a little bit about that, but there's like, there's Twitter, there's Pinterest, there's TikTok, there's YouTube, there's Instagram, Facebook. Which one do you play in most, if you will? And is that for awareness, or do you actually generate revenue for your business through whichever channel you use most?
So I don't look at social media as like a fun thing necessarily. I really view it as a just addition to my brand, and I make revenue off of it. So I wish I looked at it a little less seriously. I feel like authentic on it, but I certainly don't look at, like, I wouldn't just post a hot picture of myself tomorrow. You know what I mean? That maybe I would want someone to see. But I certainly like Instagram, and the website is really kind of my foundation and how I started. I'm on all of the other ones. I've done a lot of stuff on TikTok and whatnot, and I see it, I get the vision behind it, and I see why so many people have so much success on it. But I still really like Instagram and just like websites in general. I don't love TikTok too much. It kind of gives me a lot of anxiety, but that's just me.
Yeah, I am more visible on TikTok. I also am a fan of Twitter. I love you. Okay, I love the, like, a sentence or two to drop it, and just follow the other sentences that are coming through from others. So yeah, I don't know why everybody's like TikTok. I'm like, yeah, I kind of, and I don't have a large following across any of them combined, maybe, but the following that I do have are engaged followers, right? So, and there are organic ones. So I'm like, as my following grow, great. That's always important, especially when you're pitching to brands. But now they're looking more for engagement. So those one sentences, people are always responding to those. So I kind of like it. Those I do more myself. My team supports a lot of what I do on the other platforms, but Yeah, I kind of like that. I like doing the stories on Instagram. I like doing those myself.
You're so good at those. I mean, that's so easy. I think a lot of people have also started doing more stories and like almost less feed posts. But I mean, TikTok is cool. I think there's an element of it where you can be even more unfiltered. Like Patrina, you might go on right now and you just post like, you have 60 seconds, right? You don't need a long caption.
Yes.
You don't need any like coordinating photos or videos to go
Yes.
along. It's just in this moment, here's something I have to say. And I think that is kind of cool.
Yes, I love that so much. I love that. So, Alexa Curtis, oh my gosh, you are amazing. I appreciate your work. I'm pleading with colleges, let this young lady come in and bring her Be Fearless Summit to your university, your college, and if those high schools are listening there too, because most times what kids are getting in school is not what you're bringing, right? It's not that opportunity to see people in front of them that they may aspire to be like, or to what they see in front of them that they can ask questions directly of. Instruction is one thing, academia is also needed, but when you can have settings where there are, not with all of their professors, and they have individuals that can answer some questions that have been burning, that they feel comfortable in the room to ask, because all rooms that you create are comfortable for these students. And I just applaud the work. I wish you much success in getting into more places. I know and I love that you share the social proof of what actually is done each time you have one of those. And I hope the next university will see that and want that there as well. So thanks again. And how do people want to find you? I know you've told them that you have this blog, podcast, and Be Fearless Summit, but tell them how they actually get to it if they're interested.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me as well on the show. So the website is lifeunfilteredwithalexa.com, and the summit website is befearlesssummit.org. And then all of the social media is my name, Alexa_Curtis, and then at Be Fearless Summit. And there's also a new community that I'm hopefully going to launch into an app shortly. And you can also kind of join and be a part of that too. And that's connecting with students as well as existing mentors and everything in between.
Yes, and everything that she mentioned will be in the show notes, both on the YouTube if you're watching us, and on the podcast if you're listening. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of both It's My Money with Patrina Dixon and The Money Exchange. Make sure that you drop down to the show notes and follow both Alexa and myself. You can see behind me, It's My Money _ across all social platforms. Thank you for rocking it with the It's My Money lady.
I love you so much. How are you so good at being